Today, we're diving into the three most brutal revenge stories in history. 1. Olga and the Drevlians. We're starting with one of the most legendary revenge stories ever, when Olga of Kiev delivered some of the most cold-blooded payback in history after her husband's brutal execution. It's the year 945, and Prince Igor is ruling over Kievan Rus, a kingdom that covered parts of modern-day Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Russia. To the west are the Drevlians, a tribe that really didn't like the Kievan Rus. Even though they sometimes fought together against the Byzantine Empire, they weren't exactly friends. When Igor's father, Oleg, died in 912, the Drevlians thought, finally, now we don't have to pay tribute anymore. Igor waits patiently for his money for 33 years, but then decides that he had waited way too long. So, he travels to the Drevlian capital city of Khorasan himself to collect the tribute. He shows up with a big army, demands the money, but the Drevlians grudgingly pay him. On his way back, Igor feels the payment wasn't enough. So, he turns around with just a few of his men and heads back to Khorasan to demand more. When he gets there and starts shouting for more tribute, the Drevlians are not happy. They kill his men right away and save Igor for a truly horrific execution. They bent 2 birch trees toward each other, tied one of Igor's legs to each tree. They cut the supports, and the trees snapped back to their original place, ripping Igor into 2 pieces. Sounds terrible, right? But it didn't stop there. Prince Mal, the ruler of the Drevlians, was feeling pretty good about himself, so he thought, why not take over the whole empire and marry the beautiful Olga, who was Igor's widow? But this is where everything went wrong for the Drevlians, because Olga was not someone you wanted to mess with, and she was really pissed about the death of her husband. Prince Mal sends 20 of his best men to Kiev to tell Olga what happened to her husband and ask her to marry him so they could combine their lands. To his surprise, Olga doesn't freak out. Instead, she seems calm and tells the messengers that they should rest by their boat for now, and tomorrow, her men would bring them into the city to meet her. The next morning, Olga's men walk down to the shore to get the ambassadors. But instead of just leading them to the city, they pick up the entire boat, with all 20 men still in. The ambassadors are amazed by Olga's hospitality. What great service, they think, feeling like royalty. But things take a sudden turn. See, while they were resting, Olga's men spent the whole night digging a huge trench. When they bring the Drevlians to the site, Olga orders them to dump the boat and all the men into the hole. Then, she commands her men to bury them alive. The Drevlians can do nothing as the dirt is piled on them, and soon they're all buried. But Olga wasn't done yet. She sends her own messengers to Khorasan, asking Prince Mal to send his best men to Kiev to escort his future bride. The Drevlians, not knowing what happened to the first group, send a party of important men as escorts. When they arrive in Kiev, Olga tells them to relax in a bathhouse her men had prepared, saying she would join them after they freshened up. Her men lead the Drevlians into the bathhouse, lock the doors, and then set the place on fire, killing all the men inside. After that, Olga sends more messengers to Khorasan, telling Prince Mal to get ready for her arrival. Olga has one request. She wants a feast to mourn her late husband before she marries Prince Mal. The Drevlians, still unaware of what's happening in Kiev, prepare a grand feast for her. Olga arrives. The party begins, and she encourages the Drevlians to drink and mourn with her. They happily do so, and by the end of the night, they're all completely drunk. Then, Olga orders her men to start killing the now drunk and helpless Drevlians. Surprise! Olga's men had been drinking water all night while pretending to drink alcohol. They were sober and ready. Historians say Olga cheered her men on as they went around slaughtering thousands of Drevlians, including Prince Mal. Afterward, Olga returned to Kiev to raise an army to finish off the Drevlians once and for all. The Drevlians finally get the message that Olga wasn't joking. She comes back to Khorasan with a huge army and starts a siege on the city. The people of Khorasan suffer without food or supplies for over a year. Finally, Olga sends a message saying that if they pay their tribute, it'll all be over. Having already been tricked 3 times, the Drevlians are scared but agree to pay the tribute, fearing that Olga might still kill them. Olga responds, saying, I know I got a little carried away after Igor's death, but it's fine now. Just send me 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house, and I'll leave you alone. The Drevlians think it's a strange request, but they're so relieved that their nightmare might finally end. They quickly go out and gather the birds for her. That night, Olga's men tie small pieces of sulfur wrapped in cloth to each bird's leg, light the cloth on fire, and release the birds into the night. Olga and her men watch as 1,000 little flames fly off into the distance, heading straight for the nest the birds had built on buildings in Khorasan. Within hours, the entire city is engulfed in flames. Olga watches as the city burns to the ground, and she later claims all Drevlian land as her own. So, yeah, they really should have just paid the tribute. 2. Genghis Khan and the Khwarezmian Empire. This story is probably the best example of mess with me and find out. And like most things involving Genghis Khan, the death toll in this revenge story is insane. So let's get into it. In 1218, Genghis Khan sends a caravan of 450 merchants and traders to the city of Otrar in the Khwarezmian Empire, hoping to expand his trade network to the west. But when the merchants arrive, the governor of the city, a man named Inalchuk, orders their execution. He then takes all the goods they brought and sells them to the rich people in the city of Bokhara. One camel driver from the caravan manages to escape and makes his way back to Mongolia to tell Genghis what happened. Furious but trying to stay calm, Genghis sends a small group of diplomats, 1 Muslim and 2 Mongolians, to Shah Muhammad, the ruler of the Khwarezmian Empire, to negotiate peace. All the Shah has to do is hand over Inalchuk so he can be punished and everything will be fine. But instead of giving up Inalchuk, the Shah kills the Muslim diplomat and sends the others back. The Shah then shaves the beards of the 2 Mongolians, which is the ultimate sign of disrespect in their culture, and sends them back to Genghis. Now, Genghis is absolutely furious. He quickly raises an army of 200,000 men to crush the Khwarezmian Empire. The Mongols waste no time and attack multiple cities at once. Genghis' 2 sons, Chagatai and Ogadai, lead a siege on Otrar to capture Inalchuk, while Genghis himself heads to Bokhara to punish those who took his goods. Using new siege weapons they had gotten from China, the Mongols soon destroy the walls of Bokhara, and Genghis rides into the heart of the city. He loudly declares to the citizens that he was sent by God to punish them for their sins. Then, he orders his men to kill everyone in the city. Meanwhile, his sons are still trying to break into Otrar. After 5 months of suffering, a general inside the city realizes it's hopeless and decides to defect with a few thousand men. He opens the gates and joins the Mongols. But it turns out the Mongols don't trust traitors, no matter which side they're on. So, they kill the general and his men. With the gates wide open, the Mongols ride into Otrar and capture Inalchuk. Inalchuk is brought to Genghis, and as punishment for his greed, Genghis has molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. After this, Genghis and his army go on to destroy every city in the Khwarezmian Empire. By the end of this revenge campaign, the Khwarezmian Empire is gone, and Genghis is said to have killed an estimated 15 million people. To put it in perspective, that's about the combined population of New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago. 3. The brutal death of Akhu Yadav, an Indian man who had raped over 200 women. On August 13, 2004, Akhu Yadav was standing trial in Kasturba, India, but he was no stranger to crime. Over the past 10 years, he had allegedly raped more than 200 women, and now, those women came back for revenge while he stood in court. When the women tried to report Yadav and his gang to the police, they were ignored and laughed at. So, they decided to take matters into their own hands. A group of 200 women stormed the court, ran past stunned officials, and knocked Yadav to the ground before attacking him for 15 minutes. They threw chili peppers in his face, pelted him with stones, and one woman even cut off his penis with a vegetable knife. By the time the mob stopped, Yadav had more than 70 stab wounds. He was killed on the marble floor of the Nagpur District Court, paying for his alleged crimes. However, many of the women involved in the attack were later put on trial for their actions. Like and subscribe.